Incipci vita nova, new life begins. So Dante declares from the treasury of his memory in Vita Nuova, his love poem to and about Beatrice. When midway along the journey of his life, he woke to find himself in a dark wood, for he had wandered off the straight path, the Roman poet Virgil appears and tells Dante that he has been sent by Beatrice to guide Dante through hell, so that Dante can begin his ascent up the mountain of love and enter the eternal abode of love, the white rose, to sing of the love that moves the sun and the other stars. Let us now pilgrimage with the man whom William Butler Yeats described as the greatest pilgrim of the imagination. Love is the central theme of Dante's Vita Nuova and Divine Comedy. It is from love that new life begins. It is in love that life is sustained and made pleasant. The course of Dante's coming to understand the nature of love is what his restless mind and heart, much like his intellectual forebear, St. Augustine, deals with. How can love of a carnal and earthly creature bring about salvation? Dante never married Beatrice, but Beatrice was forever seared into the memory of his soul, as Dante admits at the beginning of the Vita. A chance encounter on the streets of Florence, when Dante was 18 years old, still madly in love with her, caused him to run to his bedroom like a love-sick puppy. Beatrice, of course, acts as his final guide in Paradiso, the concluding aspect of the Divine Comedy, and is the soul who commissioned the great Roman poet Virgil to pilgrimage with Dante through hell and purgatory. All throughout, then, Dante credits Beatrice with helping him get back on the straight and true path that he had wandered from. Dante, being a Catholic and himself something of a theologian, is impossible to understand without an appreciation and understanding of Catholic sacramentality and theology. All things properly understood point to God and can be loved if God, who is love, is truly known. To love another is not wrong unless one forgets God in the loving of another. That is precisely what Dante forgot when he meandered off the straight path, turning the beautiful things God had created for our own happiness into idols of our lust. For lust is simply the privation of love that stems from improper knowledge, a forgetting that the human being is made in the image of God and is to be loved because one loves God in loving the creation and the creature. The world, properly understood in its magnificent totality, points to reason and love, the unitive relationship between reason and love, because reason and love is God, as anyone who's educated in theology knows, and Dante himself was educated in theology before turning to becoming the greatest poet in the Western world. The Divine Comedy is an epic journey of how Dante comes to know love in its entirety, one that leads to knowledge, one that ultimately leads to the fruition of love in divine eternity. This coming to know love includes his journey through the depths of hell, the inferno, which is probably the one part of the Divine Comedy that people bother to read if they read it at all. What, then, is the essence of Dante's journey through hell? Why is the pathway to the realm of eternal love through the land of lovelessness? Why is it that Dante must journey through hell in order to get to heaven? Beginning in the circle of lust, Dante meets two illicit lovers, forever whipped around in the tempestuous whirlwind of Minos' domain. Francesca da Rimini and Paolo Malatesta are illicit romantics who broke their vows to be with each other, leading, ultimately, to their deaths. The erotic passion they temporarily shared, which Francesca tells Dante is seared into her memory and now exists as the greatest pain and grief, is now eternally denied, as each other can never consummate their desires, as they are whipped around about in a whirlwind storm, symbolic of their having been swept away by their own passions. In the dialogue between Dante and Francesca, several things set the tone for the Inferno. First is that Francesca never blames herself for her sin, her misdirected love. She actually blames Dante because she fell madly in love with Paolo after reading some of Dante's poetry. This will become a trope throughout the entirety of the Inferno. The damned never accept their responsibility, and therefore never ask forgiveness or undertake an act of repentance, bringing about reconciliation. It's never their fault. Second is Dante's pity, the pity he takes on the sinners, even if they do not acknowledge their own faults. Dante continuously has an exemplification and manifests mercy and pity as he journeys through hell. Though their punishments be just, Dante does not revel in their situation. As mentioned, he continuously takes pity on them, and here, most explicitly, he shows a great pity for Francesca. His heart is one of compassion and kindness, even unto sinners. This is also seen in the realm of the suicides, when Dante takes tearful pity on a man-turned shrub whose limbs, twigs, are all ripped off and blood spurts out. In hell, Dante is learning how to manifest love while surrounded by lust, jealousy, envy, pride, and treachery. One must acknowledge his sins and take pity on those who have aggrieved them. Love thy enemies, in the words of Christ. Only through taking responsibility for one's errors and taking pity on those who bring harm unto one can reconciliation, forgiveness, begin to emerge. And this is precisely what happens in the eighth circle of hell. It is also important here to note that Dante, following Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas, believes sin to be a result of deficient reasoning. Thus, to learn the truth means one can reform from knowledge. What is the knowledge that Dante learns as he journeys through hell? To take responsibility for errors and bad actions. He also learns and manifests in his own body, his own life, as he journeys through hell, to take pity. Knowledge of love leads to pity, sympathy, compassion, ultimately leading to forgiveness. The only moment of forgiveness in the entire poem is before entering the final circle of hell. It is as if there is an invisible barrier that our pilgrim poets must learn, must manifest, before leaving the cold emptiness of the abode of Hades. The reformation of the negative passions to loving forgiveness is the path out of hell and toward reunion with God, who is reason, truth, and love. So Dante, in dilly-dallying, as he frequently has throughout the Inferno, causes Virgil to erupt in anger at him. Dante recognizes that his foolishness here has hurt his father figure. Virgil, likewise, also realizes his anger is wrong-headed. They both recognize the errors in their way. They both realize that they have committed a wrong, and they both, therefore, act to forgive and reconcile. with one another. I was listening, all absorbed in this debate, when the master said to me, "Keep right on looking, a little more, and I shall lose my patience." I heard the note of anger in his voice, and turned to him. I was so full of shame that it still haunts my memory today. Like one asleep who dreams himself in trouble, and in his dream he wishes he were dreaming, longing for that which is, as if it were not, just so I found myself, unable to speak, longing to beg for pardon, and already begging for pardon, not knowing that I did. Less shame than yours would wash away a fault greater than yours has been, my master said, and so forget about it. Do not be sad. If ever again you should meet up with men engaging in this kind of futile wrangling, remember, I am always at your side. To have a taste for talk like this, however, is vulgar. This touching scene of forgiveness magnifies the loving relationship Dante and Virgil have been building up to this point in the Inferno. Prior to this moment of forgiveness, a tired Dante is carried down to converse with a damned soul, Pope Nicholas III, on the back of Virgil. Virgil is now carrying a tired and exhausted Dante through hell. Where they had been companions side by side, now they are locked in an embrace of each other. Virgil is sacrificing himself for the benefit of Dante. In a land of separation, Dante and Virgil grow closer and closer until that unity is achieved in this act of forgiving reconciliation, which permits the two to enter the final circle of hell, behold the traitors of history, most notably Brutus, Cassius, and Judas, being gnawed by the weeping face of Satan, then slip out of hell and return to earth in order to begin their ascent up Mount Purgatory. Upon leaving hell, Dante notes, "I saw the lovely things the heaven hold, and we came out to see once more the stars. Beauty and love have been restored." Now that beauty and love have been restored out of the ugliness and lustfulness of hell, which are the privations of beauty and love, the continuation of the journey toward the land of eternal beauty and love commences. In each of the three books, Dante opens with invocations to the muses of poetry. This every reader of the Divine Comedy should recognize. In doing so, Dante is subtly informing his readers that poetry, which is about beauty and love, can direct us to the lovely things the heavens hold. Dante also here concludes each of the books beholding the heavens. The ascent up the slopes of Mount Purgatory is the story of poetry and its redemptive power, and how poetry is the intermediary between reason and love, the bridge between both worlds. Or so Dante is at least proclaiming to us, and I tend to agree with him. Like the Inferno, Dante carries on conversations with the many souls in purgatory, which help him understand something new about love. Having learned to take responsibility for his actions and to take pity on others in hell, which are the prerequisites for forgiveness to be manifested and the trap of damnation averted, Dante learns from the souls in purgatory to direct his innate desire, which are good things given to us by the source of love itself, to the beautiful things above, rather than the insufficient things below. No longer is humanity concerned merely with the things of the world, but now concerned with the things of the cosmic whole. And this is following the theological vision of Augustine, who argued that all creation is a poem created and written by God. Thus you can see how Dante, drawing on the mystical poetic theology of Augustine, ties that to his story in Purgatorio, that all poetry is itself divine and points to the divine being, who is the only true poet-author throughout the world. If hell is the earth separated from heaven, Mount Purgatory, being the realm of poetic knowledge, is the bridge that unites earth and heaven in a Platonic whole. And Dante, of course, was a good Christian Platonist, permitting the soul to thereby dwell in the completeness of existence, rather than remain an isolated and alienated sliver of it, as we witnessed in the Inferno. This is something Dante must learn in Purgatory, in his encounter with the many souls therein. They are all directing him, teaching him, and pointing him to the fact that we do not live in an isolated and alienated cosmos, but rather the entire cosmos is one of beauty and love, that the cosmos itself, that life itself, is a poem. The pridefulness that causes only self-love must equally be purged. The passions that would cause separation and alienation and envy must be mended toward a love that unites. Here, again, pity takes hold of Dante, perhaps none more powerfully so, when he speaks of the many souls in the terrace of the proud. Later, in another powerful episode of pity, he meets one of his childhood friends and weeps with him, though he be on the road to heaven. As Dante says, "When death was on your face I wept, and now the grief I feel is just as great, seeing your face so piteously disfigured." Let us take pity on those to be drawn closer to them in love, and ultimately to love itself, Dante is prophesying in his tears. Any manifestation of pity, any manifestation of love, is the manifestation of the Spirit. Moreover, Dante now treads the path of the poets. He meets many poets in Purgatory. In fact, the Divine Comedy, in a way, is the history of poetry and its role in salvation. He met Hesiod and Homer in Limbo. Now he meets all the poets of history up to his own time. None more important, however, than the man who served as the bridge between Virgilian Rome, pagan Rome, and Christian Rome, Statius. It was a common Christian belief that the Roman poet Statius had become a Christian before his death, though this admittedly is fanciful apocrypha, but still makes for a great bedtime story, and it is that story of Statius's conversion that Dante latches on to in Purgatorio. Statius, like all the poets in Purgatory, was a poet of beauty and, most importantly, of love, for every poet ultimately is a disciple of love, for that is what poetry is principally about. Statius joins the company of poet pilgrims, now numbering 3, which is itself a reflection of the Trinity that should not be lost on readers. Friendship is the human instantiation of the Trinity in temporal life. Friendship requires more than the self. Therefore, one is like father and the other like son, bound together by the spirit of love, which glues them together. This is what Dante symbolically communicates through the new trio of poets ascending Mount Purgatory and talking about the richness, beauty, and wonder of poetry in the process. Virgil as father, Dante as son, Statius as spirit. They are the human manifestation of the Trinity, the love required to propel the soul to God above. This answers Dante's opening prayer from the beginning of Purgatorio. As mentioned, in all 3 sections of the Divine Comedy, Dante gives an invocation to the muses of poetry, and this is what he had to say in Purgatorio. "Here let death's poetry arise to life, O muses sacrosanct, whose liege I am, and let Calliope rise up and play her sweet accompaniment in the same strain that pierced the wretched magpies with the truth of unforgivable presumptuousness." and the poets and their poetry are alive during the climb up Mount Purgatory. In this company of friendship and poetry, love blossoms. All you have said reveals your love for me, Statius writes, or Statius says. Love allows us, not just the self, to approach the heavenly realm. Our fault, Statius teaches Dante, is not that we do not love, but that we do not love enough. We do not love properly. And in this love that grows and grows and grows between people, the world is born again. What permits life to arise from death? Love, but more specifically, the love found in poetry. Poetry seems to have this special and unique power among all the human creative endeavors to direct the soul to the good, true, and beautiful. In Purgatory, then, Dante learns that love is to be ordered to a vision of cosmic wholeness, which includes others rather than himself. The wholeness of love reaches fruition in the joy of friendship, the highest human manifestation of divine love. How wonderful it must be to have another, to gaze upon the beautiful and graceful face of a smiling human being and be able to say, "All you have said reveals your love for me." Poetry, most especially, communicates the reality of this cosmic wholeness in human life. Now at the top of Mount Purgatory, Beatrice, radiant in her beauty, finally appears. Dante beholds her. Beatrice, the woman whom Dante loves, has appeared at last. With eyes of light more bright than any star in low, soft tones she started to address me in her own language, with an angel's voice. So far, Dante has been teasing out the difference between love and lust, selfishness and selflessness, and how all the myriad of human desires and emotions can cast us into the oblivion of alienation and destruction, or friendship and life anew. How, then, should one understand Beatrice? Why is she so essential to the story, to the whole Divine Comedy? What makes her different from Virgil, who is an in situ father figure through hell and purgatory before his departure? And, of course, from Statius, who is the loving spirit of a friend. Beatrice is Dante's in persona Christi, the person to whom the love of God moves and speaks. This, of course, is the proper understanding of all humans, Dante is telling us. For that is how Dante wandered into darkness. He forgot that human beings are all images of God, and that in their love they reveal the reality of the love who governs the sun, the moon, and the other stars. And it is only in his coming back to understand the light of heaven through Beatrice that Dante realizes that love permeates all things, and when we understand that God is love and that love is God, we can begin our ascent into heaven. It is perhaps romantic to imagine that Dante wandered from his literal exile, contemplating on his metaphysical exile, that he saw the image of that young woman, Beatrice, so eternally etched in his memory, time and again, calling out to him to find his way home. Though we have no idea of whether or not this is true, that romantic image may well have been that which caused Dante to give such an essential role to Beatrice in his great epic. In his lust for Beatrice, Dante forgot God, and, ironically, forgot Beatrice. He thus, therefore, forgot what love is, because lust is a privation of love. Lust is ultimately, purely and solely about the self. It is that which ruptures all relations. All was for himself. All was for his own wants. He did not give a care or concern for Beatrice or God or anybody else. He wanted to consume her for himself. In his love for Beatrice, however, in moving away from that lust, Dante is brought closer to God. All is for God. All is for others. His concern for Beatrice permits him to grow closer to God in the love God demands of human-to-human relations. This, of course, is what Beatrice teaches Dante as they journey through paradise together. Just as the Inferno taught Dante something about love, pity, and forgiveness, and just as Purgatorio taught Dante something about love, pity, and friendship, principally manifested and spoken about and communicated through poetry, Paradiso completes the tripartite movement of teaching love which brings forth salvation. As Beatrice tells Dante, direct your mind and gratitude to God, who raised us up to his first star. As Beatrice guides Dante through heaven, not only does he learn about justice and the intellectual life, among other things, he learns that each of the spheres of heaven has the source and fulfillment in God. Justice, then, devoid of God, can never be just. The intellectual life, divorced from God, can never be true rationality, for again, God is truth itself, and reason according to Christian theology. The beauty of heaven, too, has its source and fulfillment in God, because God is the beautiful. Beatrice constantly reminds Dante of these facts. Dante learns, too, when speaking to the Emperor Justinian about how all recognition of God makes even the most minimal rewards in heaven so great. Justinian, such a great and noble man on earth, is far removed from the central glory and beauty of God in heaven. He is in heaven, true, but far off, in the periphery, not exactly the place you'd expect to find such a supposedly great man. Yet Justinian does not mind this. In fact, he states that all are happy as they are in heaven, and he opines that the beauty of the other lights around him make his little star more beautiful when part of the entire cosmic whole. Justinian is never concerned about himself. He recognizes that he is part of the cosmic whole, and in being part of the cosmic whole, he himself is made more beautiful. This little star is made more beautiful by valiant souls whose zealous deeds on earth were prompted by desire for lasting fame. The more desire tending toward that goal, thus deviating from true love, the less intensely burn the rays that rise toward heaven. To see the perfect balance we have here between reward and merit gives us joy, for we each commiserate with each other. How Platonic also of Dante here, or if you like, Justinian. One cannot help but also think of those great lyrics. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Justinian definitely lets his little light shine forth for all to see. After learning love as all in heaven, Beatrice guides Dante closer to the Trinity itself. The carnality of hell is gone. The corporeal purgation of purgatory has faded. Luminescent beauty, the light of the soul itself, is magnified and radiates throughout paradise. It is important to note the dialectic of imagery in Dante. Hell is the most fleshy and picturesque, and as we move closer to heaven, the more immaterial and metaphysical the conversations and imagery become. Dante, having learned that love has its source and fulfillment in love itself, takes his seat with the choir of angels and saints to sing of the love that moves the sun and the other stars. But the love that moves the sun and the other stars did not bring Dante to paradise, or at least not by itself. Beatrice did. God worked through Beatrice. Beauty, love, grace, and truth worked through Beatrice. God's love was seen through Beatrice. Beatrice was an incarnate soul of divine love, the perfect flame that we seek in life. Beatrice sent Virgil. Beatrice ushered Dante into the realm of the white rose. Beatrice guided Dante through the heavens and filled him with the theological truths Virgil did not possess. Theology is love, philosophy is reason, and love is ultimately the greatest value that exists in the world. Though love and reason have a relationship together, as witnessed by the fact that Dante has a relationship with the rational philosopher, represented romantically and poetically as Virgil, and a relationship with love, the theology offered by Beatrice, it is love that ultimately brings Dante into the seat of heaven, and it is love which causes Dante to sing. So it is appropriate that Dante sings of the love that moves the sun and the other stars at the epic's conclusion, after love incarnate, Beatrice, guided the new Dante, reformed by reason and made new by love, to exalt in this reality. In the end, however, we cannot miss a subtle and radical theological assertion by Dante. The love of other humans can, and often does, bring us to the seat of paradise. Dante is never alone in his journey to heaven. He is only alone when he is in the dark woods, wandering off the straight and true path. In his journey to heaven, someone is always with Dante. The last person to be with Dante was the woman he loved, to which he owed his eternal life. Only that love for another soul can bring new life. Undoubtedly then, as Dante was singing with the choir of paradise, he probably uttered those infamous words of the Roman poet Ovid, thanks to Beatrice, Vivam, I live. It is this journey that Dante takes us on, that is the primary reason why Yeats called him the chief imagination of Christendom. For in Dante's Divine Comedy, we see how we must come to know and manifest love in forgiveness in order to proceed to have a reconciliatory understanding of human relationships, no longer alone and isolated and alienated like in hell. Once we understand the magnanimity of forgiveness, we grow closer in bonds of love with another, and that is what allows us to move from hell into purgatory, because in purgatory we begin to understand everything as a cosmic whole, that love is the greatest virtue and value in life, and this is the true genius and the sanctifying power of poetry, for poetry has always taught us and has always sung of the redeeming power of love. And once you know this, you can proceed into heaven and gaze at the source of beauty, love, truth itself. I like to think that even though Dante's eyes are now set on love itself, Beatrice is sitting beside him with a smile on her face as they behold together the beauty and love that unites all in all.